Hello and welcome to the Big Bright podcast. My name is Vic and I'm the Brand Marketing and Communications Manager here at Bright. Today I'm joined by Adam Hunt from White Label Comedy. Adam is a man on a mission to take boring marketing spiel, throw it in the bin and bring genuine personality to brands. This approach is something that really resonated strongly with us in the Bright marketing team, and so we were sold. There are of course doubters. How would he make digital asset management funny? Would it be a slapstick nightmare or a thigh-slapping success? We'll share more about this process in the podcast, but for now, let me extend a very warm welcome to Adam. Okay, so welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Big Bright podcast. It's very exciting
for having me.
to do
Great
this.
to be here.
Oh, but yeah, I'm so pleased and so overjoyed that you're actually on our podcast. This is awesome news. I've been genuinely very excited about talking to you today.
Likewise.
Well, thank you. So yeah, I think this is a really exciting one for us because we've been working with you recently on a new, I suppose, initiative in terms of humour and comedy within marketing. This is obviously why it was a perfect opportunity to get you on the podcast today. So I just wanted to start off, I've actually got loads of questions to ask you, so I'm really hoping that we can get through them all. We're bound to go off on random tangents because that generally happens when we talk anyway, but I will try and keep it in line, but I've got some really cool questions. So I'm going to start off, if that's all right with you.
Please.
With my first power question. Adam, the first thing about you, one of the things I found very, very exciting when I found out this, when I sort of Googled White Label Comedy and I've been talking to Luke about stuff, was in a past life you were a TV producer, which is very exciting. So can you tell me a little bit more about what that was like, what shows you worked on? I have a feeling it was mainly comedy shows that you worked on because that's your bag. So yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Over the years, I've worked on some really, really fun shows. So you know, I have done lots of comedy entertainment. Like I worked on Mock the Week for years, and I've done. I was Big Brother in Big Brother. Funnily enough, sitting in a room very much like I am now, just shouting at people, telling them to stop singing commercial music was my main task as Big Brother. Like that's an example of how what's on screen and what you actually do behind the scenes is so disparate. The big thing for me and for my career in TV is that as much as comedy has always been my bag, I was always front of the queue for the jobs that I didn't love and sort of 19th in line for the... If I could have been producing The Last Leg, we'd never be talking because I would never have had that existential crisis that led me to go, right, how can I build the world I want to build? TV, with the right show, it's a fun space to play. You know, funnily enough, the show I think that kind of made me, the show that gave me the sort of license to be creative like I am now was The One Show, which is a show most people wouldn't think of as a particularly creative show. But as a producer, you're given a blank slate and you're said, right, fill that time in whatever way you want. So you can be lazy, you can phone it in and just make a boring show, or you can come up with great reasons why you could do anything and everything and be silly. I just remember my crowning glory, my favourite moment was we had Jeremy Vine as a guest presenter. We had the All Saints coming on as guests, and I decided that we should re-edit clips of Jeremy Vine from Eggheads as if he's singing All Saints Never Ever, and they let me do it, and we put it out on air. And you know, it's like that was the world in which I learned, right, if you can come up with a good enough reason, then something silly makes sense. And I think that's something that's kind of followed through to what I do now.
Yeah, well, that sounds very similar to my job, actually, weirdly. So I feel like I'm doing that quite a lot in my career, is convincing people this is a really good idea. And they're like, if I can get a good enough reason behind this. Saying that though, my CMO is going to be furious. But no, that is actually sort of true. That's the thing with marketing. I tend to find that's quite a similar vein in that.
Like the key is make it make sense. So, you know, with the work we're doing with you now, you don't start by going, right, how can we be silly? You start by saying, all right, what's our message? And then, all right, how's a fun way to express that? Like going back to The One Show, as silly as it sounds, the message was, I'm Jeremy Vine and the All Saints are here. That, you know, you still need to begin with a message you need to express. It wouldn't make sense if you weren't. And I think in marketing, people are so bored of being pitched to them. They're bored of you adding value and bored of your sort of top tips, not yours, but ours in general, the world. So Bright's top tips are brilliant. We need to find new ways to bring the message to people in a way that doesn't put them off. And I think doing that with a sense of fun, whether it's jokes or whether it's just human-led content, is the only way to do it. It's the only way to cut through the noise.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. No, it's quite weird actually, because I was obviously thinking about the fact that we were talking today last night, and I was sitting at home last night watching This Time with Alan Partridge.
Love it.
With my husband, which is, yeah, I mean, anything Partridge is a big favourite of mine. This is just a personal question. How closely do you see the relationship between The One Show and This Time?
You know that they used The One Show as research, as in they came in and they shadowed the team.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And they firstly, they came in and shadowed the team. And so like the grammar of the show that they've built is spot on. There are so many little idiosyncrasies that we have on our show that other people wouldn't notice that Steve Coogan managed to sort of nail there. Obviously, it's slightly high heightened. But yeah, I was very impressed. Obviously, they filmed it in the same building that we actually. I think his studio was elsewhere, but the actual like office scenes were on our floor and in our office. And I remember going in to work one bank holiday because someone had died, so we had to sort of pull a show out of our ass at the last minute. As there was a sort of semi-obit, as seemed to be my thing for many years. Someone dies, it's always on my day. I remember just going to the loo and Steve Coogan, dressed as Alan Partridge, just sort of walked out past me, just looking really annoyed, and I was simultaneously like really excited, but also a bit like, oh. Like if you're gonna meet your heroes, you don't want to be as you're crossing paths on the way for a wee.
No, absolutely not. But still, I mean, that's quite amazing, though. I think anybody better, actually, that I'd want to cross paths with on the way out of a toilet. Probably not Alan Partridge, because it means he's in the wrong loo. To be honest, I'm all right with that.
Well,
I think I'm still okay.
The loos at the BBC are very confusing anyway. It's really easy. On opposite floors, they kind of switch around, so it's really easy just to wander into the wrong one. We've all done it, so, it could happen.
The interesting thing about this, because all that sounds obviously very exciting. I know that you were saying that, obviously, yeah, there were a few times that you've been suggesting when you had like an existential crisis that things obviously weren't going as well. So what made you decide to move then from that career and then go and build your own essentially comedy brand?
Here's the thing, really. Two key points. One, I think all of us that have any kind of creative career, and that that includes those that work in marketing, those that work in TV, singers, everyone. You fight your ass off to get 85% of the way towards where you want to be. And then you go, oh, I should probably be happy with this then. You get to a point where you're like, this is what I thought was going to be fun. It kind of is. We sacrifice so much to get almost all the way there. And it seems senseless not to go, well, I want to actually push it and, go as far as I want to go and do the things I want to do. I think I have a low boredom threshold. And I think when I'm out of my depth, I love it. That's where new fun ideas come from. The second it's easy, I get kind of bored. And I think I was at a point when I was first a producer on the One Show, for instance, I loved it. That sort of freedom, that free reign. Maybe, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago when I was last there, I just I wasn't loving it. And I just sort of got bored because I think even when you come up with a fun idea, it's still a fun idea for the One Show. So I think what is useful is TV work is freelance. So it's not like, if you want to leave Bright, I know you won't, but if you wanted to leave your company, you have to make a big deal out of it and quit. Whereas in TV, you can just sort of not take another job for a minute and explore other stuff in between. So, white label comedy didn't happen overnight. It wasn't like a sort of step change, let's start and build this thing. So I, in between TV gigs, was always doing lots of branded content stuff. So, writing scripts for adverts and online content and social media and doing a bit of social media management. All of the clients that I had back then, they were quite small. They were sort of big enough they couldn't get away with rubbish content, but small enough that they couldn't really afford a big agency and big sort of agency fees. And they were leaning on me for funny-ish, and entertaining sort of skewed content. I just realised that there was a real opportunity just to sort of piece those two things together, because these people had money and no idea how to spend it, but they just knew they wanted to be more fun and more entertaining. Our comedy writers now, a lot of them I worked with while I was a TV producer, and it's so much fun when you get to work with them. I sort of shows have sort of few sort of smaller budgets, and you get less and less opportunity. It's more and more either it's you writing the jokes or there's no jokes, and it's sort of squeezed. So I just thought, well, let's bring the two together. But like I say, it didn't happen overnight. I think it was more just the nagging drain of the existential, why am I doing this job if I'm not loving it anymore, that slowly shifted me towards what became White Label.
Yeah. Sounds very similar to what I imagine Adrian Chiles felt when he was on the One Show. Why am I doing this anymore?
Well, I think everyone feels like that. Everyone that works on the One Show in any capacity basically says, "Why am I still here?" And eventually they get out.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you so much. Okay, cool. So I'm going to move on to another one now. Apparently, studies have shown that as young people, we laugh a lot, and then as we reach our sort of mid-20s, this figure considerably drops. Now, this to me seemed really sad. Also, I wasn't really sure how true that is because I laugh a lot, so I'm not really sure how true this is. But I think if we're basing it on this study, then why do you think we've stopped laughing so much, if that is true?
I'm with you in that, I still have a lot of fun and joy in my life, but I think only because I've made an effort to make that the case. I think, we grow up and real life takes over and stuff, stuff gets more serious and stress gets in the way, life problems get in the way. I just think it's really easy to get bogged down and sort of forget that playful sense you used to have. I think, for me, it's less about laughter and more about I think think we forget to play as the older we get. We sort of forget to make time to play. That's one thing I've been really fortunate to work in TV with the sort of people that work in TV. You're essentially spending all day, every day playing. You're playing with ideas, playing with words, playing with concepts. Even when you're not being silly, it's still a sort of form of play. And I think if you don't have a job where you're lucky enough to be playful, then you can really quickly forget to laugh. Having said that, like in terms of whether you laugh or not, I actually don't laugh out loud very often. I've had jobs where I was tasked with going to watch new comedians and, like trying to decide whether we could try and make a TV show with them and sort of talent, almost like talent scouting for development teams in TV. And I'm awful to watch comedy with because I would sit there and I'd be
This is a relief because I've said a number of very funny things today and your face hasn't changed.
I haven't creased. No, I haven't creased. But inside I've said that's funny because I think you become, in our sphere, you become sort of much more analytical about comedy. So that's maybe a reason why I laugh less. Before people were paying me to decide whether or not something was funny, maybe I laughed out loud at more things, and now I'm just like, well, is that funny? If not, it's not good enough.
Yeah, you're just more discerning. That's all it is. It's just like, this worth my time. Do you know what I mean? Are you worth my time? I understand that. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. To answer the question, I think basically life gets stressful, we forget to play, but those of us that remember to play don't stop laughing. Yeah. So the study's got the wrong people.
Yeah, I agree totally. All right. So this year, I was lucky enough to go to Festival of Marketing, a huge festival that's put on every year, and usually a physical thing, which is in Tobacco Dock in London. It's known for its amazing talks, great speakers, really good food, actually, and a lot of swag. You get loads of stuff. The food is always top notch. That's a key thing to take away from this question. While I was there, one of the talks I got to see was a guy called Tom Fishburne, who a lot of marketers will know as the Marketoonist. And he said in this quite short, 15-minute talk, that when hard times hit, most brands turn to conventional samey messaging, sort of inverted commas, and taking the stance that it's better too serious than sorry, rather than standing out and daring to, I suppose, reach out to people and using sort of humour. I definitely think that's been the case recently in terms of advertising. There's a lot of lazy advertising out there that I've seen. So I just wondered if you would agree and you think that's also the case.
I think it's definitely the case that there's a lot of lazy Route 1 advertising at the moment, and advertising, marketing, all sorts at every level of the journey. I think it comes more from a place of fear than anything else, and also just a lack of really understanding or knowing what to do and how to connect and how to actually kind of engage with an audience. I think when COVID first happened, every single brand came out with that. We're all in this together, us on Zoom, carbon copy advert that you saw like 19 times over every ad break. That was infuriating. It's kind of fair enough if you're gonna try and be a little bit formal and a little bit bland in your actual adverts, but even on social media, like it's called social for a reason, and they were just broadcasting we're all in this together without making any attempts to show that we're all in this together. And I think the one thing that humour does really well is it shows that we understand you. Like, what better way is there to show someone that you get what they're going through than make a joke about it? Because if you didn't understand it, you couldn't make the joke. But I do think the bigger the brand, the harder they fall. And there's all of these stories of brands getting in trouble for saying the wrong thing. Like
Dettol, I think, was one. Dettol
Dettol
did a terrible job.
Dettol completely missed the sentiment of the nation with a particular ad, a tube ad of theirs. But one, was their brand destroyed? No. Did I buy Dettol this week? Yes. Has it changed anything? No. Two, if you do it wrong, maybe you get in trouble. But just don't do it wrong. Like just again, like we were talking about earlier, understand that humour is all about finding a fun way to represent the right message. So Dettol didn't make a mistake by trying to be funny. They made a mistake by getting the wrong message. They just got confused.
I suppose it isn't it? I suppose fundamentally the message is wrong, which is what you were saying at the beginning. It's about understanding what the message is.
Yeah.
If you get that right, then the rest of the stuff can come. But they fundamentally just got the key core message wrong.
And I guess the thing is, humour is seen as edgy and it's seen as risky. It can be if you do it wrong. And I guess the other way to get the messaging wrong is just to have a bland message that no one will engage with. And that's what most adverts are. When you try and use humour, it's such a powerful way to put your flag in the ground and say, I believe this, that when you do humour with the wrong message, people notice. I think basically it's such an alien landscape that brands, let's be honest, the people that are in charge of the people, in charge of the people, in charge of the people who are in charge of these things, the bigger of these brands, are too busy to sort of even stop and get their heads around how it's meant to work. So they just run away and go, no, let's play it safe. It's not the time to cause a ruckus. And it's those few brands that actually manage to reflect reflect the mood of their audience that win and that, you know, do more. You know, a lot of content from brands is kind of pointless and unnecessary anyway. They're just filling the void with noise. They feel like they should. You know, the brands that do all this, we're all in this together nonsense. If they turned off their social channels, I don't think they would lose any sales. It's just that their social channels aren't contributing right now. They're having like a net zero impact.
But essentially it is. It's just filler. It's a little bit like when people just have social channels just to have a presence, and it's just, well, if you're not going to do anything with it, you might as well just turn the whole thing off. It's a pointless thing. So yeah, no, I totally get that. I know that Brits, we're sort of known, I suppose, more for, I'm not sure if I could call it cynical humour. You know, there's sarcasm, you know, there's a sort of a bit of the macabre probably in there as well. And so I just sort of wonder whether that translates into the writing that you do at White Label Comedy when you're working with British clients. Do you have to change the style, build different jokes based on the different regions or the different parts of the world?
The biggest difference between Brits and Americans is us Brits don't need to be told there's a joke to get the joke. So, you know, I could say something to you with a deadpan face on and you will laugh. Whereas often Americans, you kind of need to go, hey? To make sure they get it. You need to sort of telegraph the joke. I think that's the biggest difference in general. Now, you know, as to how that translates on social, it's an interesting question, because actually on social, you kind of need to be a bit more American in terms of stuff that looks like a joke and smells like a joke is they do get more traction. But for us, our starting point is never, are you British or American? It is, who's the audience? For instance, you know, say we're talking about digital asset management, the things that we want to say that will work for an American prospect and a British Dan prospect have more in common than they have apart, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think we go so deep into thinking about the actual client avatar that it becomes slightly less relevant, because we're starting with the brand and what they need to say and what they should say. Very rarely would a macabre approach arise out of that, or, you know, be necessary to arise out of that. I think there are some brands, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Moon Pie. They're basically like sort of American, like, wagon wheel type chocolate.
Yeah.
There's this one guy that runs their socials, and he's evolved their voice over time, and it's very macabre, it's very sardonic, quite aggressive, but also very, very surreal and very silly. You know, he's evolved that voice over time because he's got the feedback and it kind of works. But, you know, even when he began, it wasn't. You don't start like that. You know, you start with, here's my Moon Pies, I'm going to make some jokes and try and sort of play to the crowd. But I think getting feedback from your audience and building on what you know they like is definitely the way forwards. I think very, very few brands need to be sassy. You know, I think for me, there's always a way to punch up rather than punch down with your humour, and that instantly makes it less of a sort of aggressive, you know, proposition. I think if you see the way Wendy's and McDonald's and Wendy's and Burger King over in America interact, they are quite spiteful and sassy. And actually, I think we'd do a better job than they're doing with their socials, because I think there's much more inclusive, fun, more positive ways to be funny. That said, I guess that's another key difference between American humour and British humour, is that as much as we might think that we're more macabre, more surreal, etc., I think we are cleverer in our comedy, whereas put down humour is a bigger component of American comedy.
I didn't realise that, and I think that's opened my eyes a little bit in terms of your process and how you work, because I think in my head I was like, well, yeah, maybe they just need to Americanise stuff more, but actually it's not that at all. So I think that's actually been quite helpful.
We're constantly evolving our process, because marketing, comedy and psychology, you know, they have a lot in common, but no one's yet really mapped out how they intersect and why they intersect. And I'm sort of on this constant effort to do that. And so, you know, even since like the last set of work we did for you guys, we've been lots thinking about like how you take the AIDA model, attention, interest, desire, action, and try and put that into a single tweet. And like, it's really fun playing around with marketing theory, trying to transpose it into comedy, because at the end of the day, this is a piece of marketing material that we're creating, and we need to drive action. And that action might just be making someone share it because it's really funny, or it might be making them click a link. It's less about what sort of joke are we using and more about what do we need to say to that person to make them do what they need to do, and then how do we layer humour on top of that. That's our current approach, and it's proving interesting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I noticed that you put together, obviously when we were working on this, you started to develop this sort of brand sense of humour sort of matrix thing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a bit more about that?
That's where it began. So funnily enough, right, so as you'll well know, if you want to market something, it helps to be able to teach a little bit about it, give your best info away for free, real people's interest in, and then, you know, some of them will use the info, others will hire you and you can do stuff for them. We needed a way to talk about our process. And you know, realistically, our comedy writers, they just pour stuff into their brains and jokes come out. But I had to explain to our prospects what our process was and how that gives them brand safe jokes. We invented this mechanic called the brand sense of humor breakdown matrix. And it's like super simple and it's based in really solid theory. And that theory is a joke is just two things that shouldn't fit together, but you've made them fit together with a little gap that your brain can jump. Jumping that gap sparks joy. We love it. That's a joke. And there are hundreds of theories about what jokes are, but every single one of them leads back to that simple explanation. So if you get both of your things from a safe place, you're going to get a safe joke. Simple as that. You cannot write a risky joke with two brand safe ingredients unless you've introduced an extra ingredient. So we sort of invented this mechanic that we could use to explain how that works. And it became so useful that our writers now use it because actually, it's a really good way to focus them. So, what we do is we will break down a brand, its audience, features and benefits, pain points, all of that, all the stuff you'll have in documents that you haven't referred to in years, but you really should be sort of leaning on into lists. You put those lists on just a bit of squared paper, literally a bit of squared paper, any list along the top, any list along the bottom, stick a dot in the middle. You've got two things and you go, right, can I smash these things together in a way that gives me a joke? If you can, you use it. If you can't, you kind of move on. And it's a really sort of focused, quick way. It evolved because I needed a way to explain what our writers were doing inside their heads to show that we did it in a way that would generate brand safe comedy. And now it's become an invaluable tool that we genuinely use. And we do the breakdown to get our writers the material they need to write the jokes.
I think it'd be quite interesting to let people know as well about, I suppose, especially what the setup is with you guys, because I don't think that's that clear to everyone, maybe, how exactly you work, because obviously I understand how it filters through, but could you tell us a little bit more about, I suppose, how the process works then? Because now you've introduced this new matrix, which actually sounds like a really sensible plan, because it definitely gives them a starting point, because you took loads of information and stuff from me at the beginning. So can you just tell us a little bit about actually what the process is and what White Label Comedy offers, as in what you do and how you work?
Yeah, really simply, my favourite analogy is that White Label Comedy is me and now some other copywriters who have a jar of funny brains on our desk. We pour a brief in, the funny brains kind of ruminate, and then we get stuff out the other side, and then the copywriter or me knocks it back into shape and just makes sure, gives it a sort of sense check and makes sure that it achieves its goal as a piece of market material. So those funny brains in that jar, they are, some of TV's best comedy writers and some plucky up-and-comers who are just brilliant and they're sort of proven to me that they're great. We work super flexibly with them. So, a big thing for TV comedy writers is they sort of price themselves out of the market because they charge a lot of money. That means that brands couldn't afford to hire them direct. And also, they've got childcare issues. They can't go into London for, like writer's room, 12-hour day, every day of the week. So they were crying out for a more flexible way to work. So we offer them that. So when we get a new brief in, sometimes we'll assemble like a small team of sort of 5 or 6 writers. Other times we've got sort of 30 in there. So other times we go, right, everyone pile in on this if we think we want perspective, and we just send the brief out. They churn out every idea they can imagine. We then come in and scoop the best 5 or 10%, polish them up, send them on to the client. Most of our work now is social. It's short form social posts. So our biggest thing is, here are some jokes that you can use to represent your brand. But we do lots of other stuff. So we do video scripts, we do campaign ideas. One thing I love is that when you realize that thing about what a joke is, it's just two things smashed together with, in a sort of creative way. You can use their brains to make stuff that isn't funny, but doesn't need to be funny. So, we've had people hire us just for like brand activation ideas. So, one particular, a shaving brand that I shan't mention, this is before the lockdown, they were relaunching their new razor to the supermarkets. They had like a small event for the supermarket buyers to come in, and they just wanted ideas for how they could showcase this new razor in a creative way. And we gave them a whole load of ideas, and it's, a third of those were funny ideas that you'd need our jokes to make work. It's, the power of using this sort of we call it the White Label Comedy hive mind, for, the power of using them for creativity. It's like me having a massive brain and just being, rather than having to sit there and churn out, I need some ideas. I just go, right, here's the brief. You guys deal with it. I'll come back in an hour and I'll take it's really freeing.
It's a great process. I mean, can you just tell me, in terms of the calibre of the people that you're working with, what sort of shows are these people coming from, to give people an indication?
Yeah, I mean, you name it, they've written for it. So we've got a fair few that have written for Mock the Week, Celeb Juice, Haven't Used For You. A couple of our newest writers are script editors, so that's kind of the sort of the top dogs on, I think, the Now Show. And when we're bringing new writers into our hive mind, we've got a waiting list of about 200 people that want to write for us. And whenever we've got a new opportunity, I'll send out a message to that list, and that list contains people from, who've just had one radio credit all the way up to big TV top dogs. I don't care what they've done before. I just say, right, here's the brief, give me a joke.
Oh, for sure. This is a bit awkward because obviously I haven't been receiving that email. So There must be something wrong with your mailing list.
Yeah, no, there is. We've moved you onto the "will give us money rather than we give them money" mailing list. So
Right.
you now, because you've hired us, you now can't be a writer. Otherwise,
Right.
otherwise we'd be in this sort of really confusing meta circle,
Yeah.
and no one would ever make any money.
I understand.
Yeah.
I
You
understand.
shot
Yeah.
yourself in the
No.
foot.
Okay. Yeah. It's my own fault. It's my own fault. Right. No, that's fair enough. Okay. Awkward. But on a lighter note, though, one of the really interesting things, actually, from what you were saying there as well, with the stuff that you were giving us. So we sort of signed up to do the sort of social Twitter takeover thing, and now we're working with you on sort of more of an ad hoc basis with, you know, packs of jokes. One of the lovely things about it is that, of course, they're used for short form social posts, which is great. But now that I'm working with other members of the team and other teams within the business, where we're looking at customer communications and things like that, I've started to look at how we can bring those jokes into other things. So they come into the newsletters, and now they're forming other bits of content and the way that we write. So actually, if you allow yourself to sort of expand that, then, you know, it can start becoming much more of the way that your company communicates in general. And I think that's really exciting, is not to just see it as a siloed thing, but think actually, okay, yeah, well, how will that work? And we did some terrible things on our latest newsletter. Well, I say terrible, I thought it was great. It was Fangs for the Memories. It was a Halloween thing. I was just quite pleased with myself. It's all about version control, which is a digital asset management term. I think that's a really exciting part of the process, and working with you on this has been great, is that now people are really seeing, oh, actually, hang on a minute, can I use one of those in something else? And it's like, of course you can.
One of my sort of biggest things I'll actively encourage any client of ours is to make more use of the content we're generating, because some clients that just sort of look at the rate speed charge and they go, well, that's nothing. Here you go, blank checkbook. And there are other clients who go, well, you know, do you know what? That's a bit of an investment. I don't know if I don't know if we're there yet. But there's always another life for a joke. I think because our starting point is how can we take what you're already about and say it in a funny way. You know, there's immediately 10 other places to use that joke, and in a way that doesn't feel like it's doubling up or you know, doesn't feel weird. So we used to do this thing called a simulated social takeover. We've now retired that, and we now do a much more sort of involved starter pack thing, because our research process has evolved, and we need to basically do a whole lot of research. But our first ever Twitter takeover client hired us for that takeover, saw the content, and went, I love you, and hired us to resource a complete rebrand. It was a small business, small e-commerce business, but for the last 2 years, this guy had been trying to find a company that could represent what he's selling with the wit and the warmth and the personality that the gifts themselves that he was selling bring. And he was like, I want this threaded through everything we do. So now, you know, we're still in the middle of sort of working on that with him. And I think it's great because we've written jokes for social that we've then reversioned for a lead magnet for him. We've got sales pages and emails in their automations that are full of the same little jokes. You know, we're about to start on some Facebook ads. For the Facebook ads, we barely need to charge him because we just get one of the copywriters to take the jokes we've already written and turn them into Facebook ads. There's a million ways to use it because you are expressing the brand's essence in a way that isn't bland. Yeah. And you know, that's the most important thing.
Exactly. Well, it's definitely made a huge difference, I think, to some of the stuff that we're doing. So I think that's really exciting. If a campaign or a piece of bad press has hit the wrong note with an audience, do you think it's appropriate for a company to react with humour on social media?
The answer is maybe, always maybe. I think it really depends on what you did wrong, how serious that was. Sometimes, you know, a heartfelt apology is the way to go. This is assuming that the thing they did wrong wasn't humour to begin with. So let's assume that they made a mistake and they're just trying to respond with humour. A specific type of humour works well. So self-deprecating humour is good. You find a fun way to explain what happened, but you need to do that in a way that doesn't undermine what happened and it doesn't sound like you're trying to pass the buck. You need a team like ours to help you do that. Like it's a real mix of PR. Yeah, what have you done? What have you screwed up? This question is just to help you fix a problem, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. All right. So yeah, selfless plug there, I think. Yeah, so basically give you a call if that's the case.
Give us a call, I think, crucially. So self-deprecating humour can work really well, but it's not always the best answer. I think start with what do people need to hear to forgive us for whatever we've done.
Yeah.
Then just tell them that. Either way, be human in your apology. So whether you are apologising in a funny way or just in a heartfelt way, be human, own it, and then people will forgive you. Don't wrap it up in corporate speak. Don't try and justify it, and don't try and pass the buck. Like say it was something that you posted about that you shouldn't post about. Don't blame it on a rogue employee, or just own it. Like if it was signed off by the CEO, admit it. We made a mistake. We screwed up. The brands that have the balls to do that get massive respect.
Yeah.
If it's because you've posted something you thought was funny and that offended people, then just don't do that to begin with. If you're in the position where you need to apologise for tweets you thought were funny, then you've got the wrong team tweeting. So yeah.
Yeah, I've worked in teams before where something's gone wrong. I think everybody's worked in a team where something's gone wrong, whether I think something's been sent out that shouldn't have been sent out, something's been said that shouldn't have been said, and you have to think of a way of doing it. But I think you're absolutely right. It's just taking it back and thinking about it from a human perspective. What's the right thing to do? That sort of being humble and admitting it as well is incredibly important, and not trying to pass the buck or the blame. So I totally agree. I was wondering if you think there are any types of humour or subjects that you would warn companies against using online.
Anything that splits your audience down the middle. Good social comedy is all about reflecting your audience's vibe back at them in a way that has your brand wrapped up in it as well. So, you need to capture the moment, you need to talk about things they care about, you need to say things they agree with, and you need to entertain them and engage them. It all starts with getting to know your audience. That's the main thing. I think once you've got to know your audience, then if you're saying things they all agree with, even if those things are controversial, you're fine. When you're trying to sell a chocolate bar, the things that chocolate bar lovers all agree with that's not going to include anything political or anything religious or anything divisive. So yeah, I've said it. Just don't split the room. That's it. That's literally the only thing. Beyond that, nothing is off limits. If your entire audience believes something offensive, be offensive, because in that context, it's not offensive.
We were talking about McDonald's earlier, and you mentioned Wendy's and wells like that. I think this might be on your list of brands that you think are doing things well, and it's always one I think is doing really well as well. So do you think, have you got any examples of companies that you feel always get the tone of their humour just right with marketing?
Two things are interesting. I think McDonald's has two Twitter accounts that we follow. One is in the US, one is in the UK. The one in the US is funnier and snarkier and very, very sort of US comedy. The one in the UK doesn't quite get it right. One of our team is currently analysing all of their tweets, because we're writing a book at the minute to try and break down the big brands, what they do right, what they do wrong. I'll have a better answer for you in a couple of weeks on that. But I think there are a lot of brands that seem to have sort of got this engagement playbook from the internet, and they're just sort of following it to the letter and asking really bland questions and posting a picture of their new burger and saying, hey, do you like the burger? It's just they're like so close to doing things right, but they're doing it all wrong. A new client of ours, we had a conversation about whether or not we should tweet with I or we. This big brand, if we're going to make jokes and we make jokes that say I, is it weird because we're not I? We are this particular retailer that I can't name, otherwise I'll get shot. We went back and forth over this, but we have broken down the best jokes on social use I, and that's because you feel like you're sort of peeking behind the curtain, seeing it's a real person making a joke, so it's more relatable. You feel like you're seeing something you shouldn't see, so it's exciting. It's one step away from corporate bullshit. And I think McDonald's in America is very I, whereas McDonald's in the UK is very we. So even when they try and be funny, it's us trying to be funny. So it's McDonald's making a joke. There was just one brilliant example from McDonald's a couple of weeks ago, and it was something along the lines of, it's always, when's the McRib coming back, not how are you doing, man who tweets at McDonald's. And that was great because you break the fourth wall, you look behind the curtain, and it's like a stealth advert for McRib, which is now coming back. If they had just said, hey guys, the McRib's coming back, it wouldn't have worked. It's this real comedy with strategy. So yeah, the one brand though that for me always nails it is Innocent. So Innocent Drinks, they don't even need to make jokes to be funny. They know exactly what their audience wants and how to give it to them. I think, like I said earlier, that a joke is two things smashed together, gap in the middle. Now, you don't always have to say both of those things. Like if thing one is already in the air and all around us, you don't need to say that as the setup. You can just give us the punchline. So Innocent are great at just saying how it is and really engaging with our world right now. Like they, during the first lockdown, every day for a month, they just tweeted, this is your daily reminder of what day it is. Today is Wednesday. But it was great because none of us knew what fucking day it was. That was exactly the mood of the nation. And it got, that tweet went viral every single day because people loved it. For me, Innocent have a great way of making anything about them and making it sort of part of their world, but in a way that we care about. And I think, they're the only brand that I look at and go, if you hired us today, I don't know that we could directly improve what you do.
Yeah.
Everyone else, I think there's stuff that we do differently. Innocent, to be honest, they're right in the playbook and they're a good one to follow.
Awesome. I think it'd be really good to see some examples of some B2B brands actually doing more and stepping up and doing more, because I think that would pave the way. I mean, I'm sure that you've got quite a few B2B clients anyway now, obviously us being one of them. One of my views is always that it is never B2B, it's still B2C for me, because the people that are buying digital asset management software or whatever product that you're buying in a B2B landscape or service, there are people like me that sit behind the line that are the people with the budget, the people that want to be entertained. So I'm excited to see more B2B brands doing better, and I hope that we will be one that is starting to do more.
I think like it is important. I think you're bang on that whatever you're selling to a person, and humour doesn't just exist to like entertain. It gets our attention. And I think if your business is in a space that could be duller than some things, then those people are spending all day every day immersed in boring stuff. It's stuff they care about, but it's stuff that, you know, they're not being excited. If they see like a bit of funny content, a little bit of a joke that represents their world, but it does it with wit and warmth and humour, that will instantly get their attention. You know, they will be drawn to that like moths to a flame, because no one makes that kind of world funny and entertaining. I think as we've learned, you don't need to undermine the product to be funny. That's why people are scared of B2B. They think it's going to undermine them. It's not. It's just going to attract attention. The message is still Asset Bank is the DAM you need. That's still the message. You know, we'd never make a joke that was at Asset Bank's expense.
Yeah.
So I think actually the work we did with you guys was probably one of our most important case studies, because until then, the question we got from every B2B prospect was, yeah, but it wouldn't work for B2B, would it? And we go, well, look, here it is.
Yeah, I was excited because when I got the initial sort of Twitter takeover that you were doing before through, I knew it was going to work, but I was expecting probably 40% of what you sent through.
Yeah.
I actually liked about 95% of what you sent through. And there were some bits on there and I thought, oof, can we push it that way? I always have to think about the brand and the brand values as well, because, you know, ultimately I can use as many jokes as I like, but if they're inappropriate, that's still not going to work for us. You know, it has to meet that sort of sweet spot for people. But the stuff that you sent over was great, and it was exciting, and it excited people here. And I think that was a great thing as well. Internally, people went, wow, that's actually quite cool.
I think one of the best things about B2B is when the value of what you're selling is relatively high, you don't need to go viral for that content to have an impact. Like, you know, you're already reusing it in your other materials and you know, just using it to give everything else a bit of personality. Even if it was just social, like even just the impact, you know, when you've got one person who is comparison shopping software, they're just having a little skim of the socials and they just see something that makes them chuckle, that instantly just nudges you up the running order. And so, you know, I think for B2B brands, a lot of it is it's a way to show that you're human, ready for when people check in to see what you're all about. Obviously, we'd love it to go viral. I think, you know, one thing I loved was one of the sort of hashtag game bits that we'd written for you guys, getting a bit of interaction from some other DAM, other companies. And, you know, that's really fun to see. If you're selling chocolate bars, then you need it to go viral to have an impact. Otherwise, you know, you're not going to make your money back. But if you're selling an awesome bit of very useful but not £3.99 software, then just the boost it gives to the brand's perception, I think is massive.
No, it's been great. Honestly, I think we've really enjoyed it. I feel like it's really lightened things up, and I think people need a bit of that at the moment. They need entertaining as well. It's not just obviously entertaining,
Definitely.
but I think it's a great thing to do. So I'd wholeheartedly recommend having a chat with you guys, to be honest. That's me done with my questions. I mean, I suppose I had one, which is, again, it's just more that if we were to go to the pub, really, I feel like we could be best friends, Adam, if only you'd allow us.
I agree. If we went to the pub, we would be best friends.
We would be best friends. But I think I'm always interested in salacious celebrity gossip, so I didn't know if you had any for me from anything that you've been on. But I'm sure you have.
Do you know what? I am a really poor source of celeb gossip. I think all of the things I could tell you would get people in legal trouble, and I genuinely can't share the stories on this podcast. And do you know what? It's funny. There's one guy who's worked on the One Show who always, throughout his entire career, had all of the ridiculous celeb stories, like just full of tales of him embarrassing himself in front of celebs. But I have none, so I can't give you MILF stories. Otherwise, I would tell you about Justin Timberlake in the lift and Meatloaf shitting himself, and I can't do that.
So annoying. Anyway, it's been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much, Adam. I've had an absolute blast talking to you. It's been so interesting, and I'm really urging people, B2B brands out there, other marketers, to consider this as a way forward. So obviously we'll put all of your details as well on our blog post, and we'll put some links and things in as well so people can find you. But it's been an absolute pleasure, so thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Big Bright podcast. Make sure to subscribe to never miss an episode, and check out our website at builtbybright.com.